This is Human Wreckage, where we search for truth in the aftermath of unthinkable loss and try to understand how ordinary lives unravel into something irreversible. I'm your host, Thomas. On a cold February night in 2016, the city of Syracuse, New York, fell into a kind of stunned silence. Not because of a storm, not because of a scandal, but because of a name, Maddox Lawrence. She was just 21 months old, too young to speak in full sentences, too young to understand what fear is, but not too young to be remembered forever. By the time her photo reached the news of cherubic face, most people had already heard the terrible outline of what had happened. Maddox had been reported missing. Her father, Ryan Lawrence, had confessed. Her body was discovered days later, submerged and wrapped in a bag weighted with rocks, near the Onondaga Creek Walk. What led to that moment, a father carrying his child to the edge of the water, is the kind of question this podcast exists to ask. And often, there isn't one answer. There are dozens. There's history. There's trauma. There are cracks in the system. And sometimes, the only thing that's clear is how little sense any of it makes. Let's get into it. Ryan and Morgan Lawrence were young parents. From the outside, they seemed like any other family trying to find their footing. They had jobs, friends, and a daughter they doted on. But behind the filtered Instagram photos and smiling updates was something darker, something fraying quietly at the seams. Ryan was, by many accounts, struggling with fatherhood, with insecurity, with feelings of being left behind as his wife pursued a new job. And then came something even more devastating. Maddox was diagnosed with a rare form of eye cancer, retinoblastoma. She was only a few months old. She survived. She beat it. And somehow, that is where the nightmare began. In this episode, we trace the story of Maddox Lawrence, not just her final days, but the chain of events that led there. The warning signs, the missed chances, the deep, disorienting sadness that sometimes hides inside the people closest to us. This is not an easy story to hear. It's not meant to be. But it is, unfortunately, a necessary one. Because behind every headline, there is a child, there is a life, and there is wreckage, the kind we can't always see until it's too late. The Lawrence family, Ryan, Morgan, and their 21-month-old daughter Maddox, lived on Valley Drive in Syracuse, New York. Ryan, originally from Baldwinsville, had a talent for art. As a student at C.W. Baker High School, he earned an honorable mention in the Scholastic Art Awards. Tragically, Ryan lost his mother, Mary Lawrence, to kidney cancer when he was just 17. Mary had worked as a victim advocate at the district attorney's office. After high school, Ryan held various low-wage jobs, including stints at the Real Food Co-op, Pastabilities, and Tivana at Destiny USA Mall in Syracuse. It was at the mall where he met Morgan. A Liverpool high school graduate, Morgan also worked multiple retail jobs, including at Pastabilities, Tivana, and 2 clothing stores in the mall. While working together, Ryan and Morgan became close, and Morgan eventually became pregnant. The couple decided to marry and moved into a rented home on Valley Drive. Friends and family described them as inseparable. In 2014, their daughter Maddox was born. A happy and spirited baby, Maddox had a unique personality, often making funny little monster noises, as her aunt Shaylin Leonard fondly recalled. However, Maddox's early months were challenging. Ryan and Morgan noticed her left eye changing color, darkening over time. After medical evaluations, Maddox was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, a rare cancer of the retina. During fetal development, retinal cells, called retinoblasts, grow rapidly before maturing into light-sensitive cells. In rare cases, these immature cells fail to develop properly, growing uncontrollably into cancer. This was Maddox's reality. The family's weekends soon revolved around trips to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, where Maddox underwent chemotherapy targeting the tumor and the blood vessels feeding it. Each treatment lasted 6 hours. Balancing the emotional and financial strain of caring for their daughter, Ryan and Morgan faced significant challenges. They both worked low-income jobs, making the costs of treatment overwhelming. Turning to GoFundMe, they raised over $9,000 from nearly 100 donors to support Maddox's medical care. As Maddox's health improved, the family began to find some normalcy. Neighbors often remarked on the bond between Ryan and his daughter. Ryan, who delivered pastries for Freedom of Espresso stores around Syracuse, always brought Maddox along. He would carry her in one arm and pastries in the other, never leaving her behind in the car. Their closeness was evident to everyone who saw them together. Around 10 p.m. on February 20th, 2016, Morgan finished her shift at work. Since the family only had one car, Ryan typically dropped her off and picked her up. That night, however, Morgan received a strange text from Ryan, informing her that he had left the car in the parking lot with the keys and that she should drive herself home. When Morgan arrived home, she was met with an unsettling scene. Ryan and their daughter Maddox were gone. In their place, she found a disturbing note suggesting Ryan might harm himself or Maddox, along with an 8-minute video addressed to her. In the video, Ryan said, "I'm leaving, and I'm taking her with me." Panicked, Morgan called the police, and an Amber Alert was issued. Authorities launched a massive search, scouring areas near the family's home and Destiny USA Mall. The Onondaga County Sheriff's Department deployed their Air 1 helicopter to assist, while local and state police extended the search to Onondaga Lake, the Creek Walk, and abandoned buildings in Syracuse and Baldwinsville. 2 days later, a breakthrough came when a woman in Baldwinsville spotted Ryan on Downer Street, about 10 miles from the Lawrence home. Despite being in disguise, the woman recognized him and alerted police. Upon his arrest, Ryan initially gave a false name before admitting his identity. His backpack contained camping gear and a book on evading capture, but Maddox was nowhere to be found. During his interrogation, Ryan first claimed he had given Maddox to a local couple who had fled to Bolivia. Skeptical, detectives pressed him until one bluntly asked, "How did she die?" Ryan finally confessed, "Blunt force trauma." Ryan revealed that after dropping Morgan off at work, he had driven Maddox to Labrador Hollow, a secluded state recreation area in Cortland County. There, in a remote section of woodland, he placed her on the ground and struck her in the back of the head with a baseball bat. He then burned her body along with the bat. In chilling detail, Ryan described how he prayed for a sign before committing the act. "God, if I'm not meant to kill her, make her stumble," he reportedly said. Afterward, he placed Maddox's remains in a yellow bag, weighted it with a cinder block, and disposed of it in the water near Creek Walk at Bear and Van Rensselaer Street. While the confession was horrifying, Ryan's motive was equally appalling. He admitted that he killed Maddox out of jealousy. He resented the attention she had received during her cancer treatments, particularly from Morgan, feeling overshadowed by his own daughter's needs. After the confession, detectives began searching the waters of Syracuse's inner harbor. Police divers were dispatched to the water near Creek Walk, where they recovered Maddox's body. The scene was so harrowing that police chaplains were brought in to support the detectives, particularly those present when her remains were retrieved. Ryan was charged with second-degree murder the same day, but initially pleaded not guilty. As the grisly details of the crime emerged, the community was overwhelmed with shock and grief. Many had held on to hope that the situation was a misunderstanding or a temporary family dispute that would end with Ryan and Maddox returning home safely. The murder devastated the close-knit Syracuse community. Makeshift memorials sprang up at the inner harbor, near where Maddox's body was found, and along Onondaga Creek. Local resident Melody Wilkinson expressed the collective sorrow, saying, "This shook up the entire community. We've always been close-knit, and when something like this happens, we come together to support each other." As Ryan awaited trial, those who knew him struggled to reconcile the loving father they thought they knew with the man who had confessed to such a horrific act. Many questioned whether there had been any warning signs. Ryan's family grappled with the tragedy, finding it impossible to comprehend his actions. "What we saw of Ryan was that he loved Maddox immensely," the family said in a statement. "We are struggling to make sense of this tragedy and know that we never will." His brother, Rich Lawrence, spoke openly to the Post-Standard, saying there had been no indication Maddox was ever in danger while in Ryan's care. Rich described his brother as a slacker and selfish, but emphasized that Ryan had never exhibited violent tendencies. Rich also admitted that Ryan was prone to fanciful ideas, like spontaneously deciding to move to Florida or dreaming of becoming an Olympic skier, but these were harmless fantasies. Reflecting on the unimaginable crime, Rich said, Maddox is the victim, and my brother is to blame. What Ryan did is unforgivable. He does not deserve my support. We are on Maddox's side, the side of the victim. Initially charged with second-degree murder, Ryan's charges were later upgraded to first-degree murder. As his trial date approached, Ryan pleaded guilty to Maddox's murder as part of a plea agreement. In exchange for his guilty plea, he received a sentence of 25 years to life, avoiding the possibility of life without parole had he been convicted at trial. Under the terms of his sentence, Ryan would serve a minimum of 25 years with no chance for early release, as his conviction was for a violent felony. In court, prosecutor Jeremy Colley explained that Maddox's family had agreed to the plea deal to avoid the emotional toll of a trial. The judge emphasized that he would not have accepted the agreement without the family's consent. Motivation often influences sentencing in murder cases. A cold, calculated killing is judged differently than one committed in the heat of passion. Despite Ryan's earlier claim that jealousy drove him to kill Maddox, the question of why remained. Prosecutors argued that Ryan's actions after the murder, burning Maddox's body, disposing of her remains, and fleeing demonstrated a premeditated and deliberate crime. In contrast, Ryan's defense attorney, Michael Vavanese, maintained that Ryan had been a devoted father and that something must have caused him to snap. "I don't know that we'll ever be able to comprehend exactly why he got to this emotional state," Vavanese said. Prosecutor Colley responded bluntly, "All I know is he killed his daughter." The defense claimed Ryan felt profound remorse and pointed to a psychiatrist's diagnosis of extreme emotional disturbance at the time of the murder. However, the prosecution's experts strongly disagreed with this assessment. The sentencing phase began on November 15th, giving Maddox's family the opportunity to share their grief. Her grandmother, Robin Forster, delivered a powerful statement, revealing a telling detail about Ryan's actions after his arrest. He had divorced Morgan and, instead of requesting keepsakes of Maddox, asked for a fish tank, a photo of his dog, and a bike without wheels. "These are the things of value and importance to him," Robin said, glaring at Ryan. "Was Maddox ever important to you?" She described how the family's lives had been shattered, with memories of Maddox now their only comfort. Even speaking her granddaughter's name caused her voice to shake, and staying in the home where they had cared for Maddox was excruciating. Morgan, Maddox's mother, addressed the court for the first time. Through tears, she described the crippling anxiety she had suffered since her daughter's death, which made it nearly impossible to hold down a job. She shared how isolating it was to be alone, yet even harder to be surrounded by people, as conversations often turned to Ryan and the murder. Turning directly to Ryan, she asked, "I would give anything to hug her again. I just think it's so cowardly what you did. What was the point?" Ryan Lawrence was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years. For months, Ryan and Morgan had fought tirelessly to save their daughter's life, supporting her through grueling cancer treatments. By her first birthday, Maddox had overcome retinoblastoma, a battle many feared she might lose. Yet, before she could enjoy the carefree childhood she had earned, her life was cruelly taken from her. Even more tragic was the betrayal of trust by the one person she should have been able to rely on unconditionally, her father. We began this episode with the name Maddox Lawrence. And now, as we reach the end, that name carries a weight we can't and shouldn't try to escape. She was a toddler, a daughter, a fighter, a little girl who smiled through surgeries and setbacks no child should ever endure. She had made it through cancer. She had come out the other side. And then the unimaginable happened, not from disease, but from betrayal. From the very person who was supposed to protect her. Her death is not just a tragedy, it's a rupture. A point where reality splits and nothing fits back the way it should. The story of Maddox is not only about Ryan Lawrence's crime, it's also about what goes unseen. The isolation of mental illness, the invisible toll of caregiving, the pressure on young families to hold everything together when they are barely holding themselves. And hauntingly, it's about how those cracks can go unnoticed until they widen into catastrophe. After Maddox's murder, people across the country ask, how could this happen? But the harder, more important question is, how do we stop it from happening again? There are no easy answers, and if we're being honest, there may not be satisfying ones either. What we have instead is a call to pay attention, to listen more carefully when someone we love is slipping away from themselves, to believe people when they say they're struggling, and to stop pretending that being a parent or a partner or a person in pain is something we can just power through alone. Ryan Lawrence is serving a life sentence, and yet, in a deeper way, everyone who knew and loved Maddox is still living in the shadow of that night. Grief like this doesn't end. It changes shape. It moves in and makes a home. But Maddox is more than the way her life ended. She was funny. She was resilient. She danced to music and lit up at the sight of her mom. She deserved to grow up, to laugh, to be celebrated for who she was, not remembered only for how she was lost. So today, we remember her. Not as a headline, not as a lesson, but as a little girl who mattered. If you or someone you know is struggling with depression, overwhelming stress, or violent thoughts, please reach out. There is help. There is always another path. Thank you for listening to Human Wreckage. This episode was written and produced with the hope that through even the darkest stories, we can find something worth holding on to, something human. I'm Thomas. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.